Hello everyone and welcome to Music Theory with Gim. In this installment we're going to be looking at the Mission Complete theme from Front Mission Gun Hazard. This is a rather simple theme, but it'd be very beneficial to understand how to readily build suspended triads because, well, pretty much we're going to be dealing with them the entire analysis. There are a couple other things, but you should be able to follow along with most of it as long as you understand what a suspended triad is. That said, if you have any questions about the analysis, feel free to reach out and ask. So this is an interesting victory theme because it's very open and impressionistic in certain ways. Not in the direct sense of, say, French Impressionism, but more so in the fact that there are no chords built in a tertian style. There is only one instance of a truly tertian chord, and that doesn't even really count. And as a result, we have a theme that doesn't immediately sound like, "Congratulations, you win!" So if you're feeling that your victory themes are a little bit predictable, the language here can potentially help in that department. Starting from the beginning, we hear a chordal voicing built atop B flat. This provides the 4th, flat 7th, and flat 10th, or 3rd. Following this pitch, that is another that is almost identical. Everything shifts up a whole step except the top voice. Rather than D flat moving upward to E flat, we hear that it moves up to D natural. This keeps it from being a purely chordal voicing, as there is now a 3rd between B flat and D. This is the only instance of any kind of tertian chord, but even here we're not really hearing that. Instead, we're hearing another instance of a sus voicing. But what is pretty interesting is that we still get this sort of half-step recension, which kind of sounds like a resolution, but the information below obscures it. So it sort of has this, "great job, you did it," but is also reflective like, "but what did you do? What did it mean? What do you mean?" And before we can drift into the deep abyss that is self-assessment, we're shoved into this really heavy upbeat groove. And this groove is really what makes it fit as a Mission Complete theme. Despite not finding the typical language victory themes have, the upbeat nature of the groove makes you still feel pretty pumped up about your completion. And with this groove hitting, we're now in the primary loop of the theme. It's very minimal in construct, but has some really cool concepts going on, especially if you're not used to thinking of suspended triads outside of the typical suspension and resolution setting. In terms of harmony, we're seeing a sort of F minor 7 at 11 and B flat 9 sus progression with what can be viewed as a C minor 7 at 11 at the end, but the way the tune is orchestrated doesn't bode well to the oversimplifying nature of chord symbols. In this analysis, we're going to pass over the bass line as well as the drums, but they are worth checking out. We're going to start off with Ostinato, and this is a really great figure, and one that the sheet music doesn't really show you the entirety of, and this is because the way it pans in the track is very important. Even though it's programmed as two separate lines, when played together you can hear the ostinato acting as a single entity, pushing back and forth between the stereo field. Some notes coming out sounding like delays while others are more prominent. And it's really more about creating a wash of sound versus a distinct melodic figure. And if you really investigate each line, you'll see that they're both the exact same thing, except the lower line has been displaced by an 8th note. So let's take a listen to it for a little bit and then we'll move forward. So throughout the entire loop, this never changes. It's the same thing every measure, and all it is an angular arpeggiation of an F7 sus, which contains the root, 4th, 5th, and flat 7th. Now in relation to F, this is, of course, true. But over B flat, if we choose to think of it as a distinct root, the relation alters. Now we hear F as the 5th, B flat as the root, C as the 9th, and E flat as the 4th. And when C enters as bass, the F7 sus is reflected as F now being the 4th, B flat the flat 7th, C the root, and E flat the flat 3rd. Now in addition to ostinatos, we also have a few chord voicings. For almost the entire duration, we see two sus triads played in parallel motion. We have both F sus 4 and E flat sus 4 voiced in first inversion. These both sound over F and B flat. Due to F7 sus containing F sus 4, we'll only be looking at what E flat sus 4 contributes to the harmony. Within it we find two previously discussed notes, those being E flat and B flat, but we now hear the note A flat as well. In relation to F, A flat is the flat 3rd, and in relation to B flat, it is the flat 7th. So if we crammed all of the implied extensions together, we would get an F minor 7 at 11, and in relation to B flat, we would create a B flat 9 sus. We never see A flat atop the bass note C, and that's because we hear a B flat sus4 triad, which is also voiced in first inversion just like the other two. But again, these are notes that we've already heard because B flat sus4 is actually found within F7 sus. And if we put all the notes above C, we would have a C minor 7 add 11, but the lack of a fifth is an important aspect to this voicing. Now there is an instance where E flat sus4 is voiced in second inversion, and in conjunction with the C minor 7 add 11, this creates a lot of tension or excitement, and this is great for setting us up for a return to the beginning of the loop. And so yeah, we can pretty much consider this analysis complete. But as usual, how do we make this language part of our own? Well, there are a number of things to consider. One would be certainly to consider how you can retain an ostinato across all harmonic instances. As we hear in this theme, it can have an adhesive effect that makes the harmony sound less like separate entities and more like a conglomerate. And as we also saw here, it's really worth considering how the ostinato can be implemented into the mix, especially if you're working in production versus live performance. And the last thing I want to mention is that it's very much worth your time to experiment with the relation of suspended triads atop different bass tones. This can easily become a rabbit hole, but it's well worth traveling at least a little bit. An example unheard here would be a suspended triad built from the major 7th, which can create a sort of Lydian sound, but then you can also follow it up with a different suspended triad, such as one built from the 6th. Anyways, just dig into this stuff and see what happens. Experiment with suspended triads beyond simply suspending and resolving them. If you're at all looking for a way to sound more impressionistic or quote-unquote modern, this is a great starting point. So if you happen to have any comments or questions, drop them below. Otherwise, thank you for watching another episode of Music Theory with Gim.